In a previous video, we looked at how to add our rectangle, how to add our canvas, how to add images to the canvas. So we want to clean this up a little bit so we can actually start making things move around. So instead of using an image, which you could use an image and do exactly the same thing, I'm going to remove this image from here. This is the same code we had from last time. So if you don't have this code, go back to the previous video and make sure you catch up with us on this one, this video here. So we're removing that image, and as you can see here, I have this get element by ID, and I'm calling upon this ball, which I created a variable up here, which I am going to remove both that and this draw image here. So that way when I save this, I am right back to where I was initially before the ball. Because what I want here is I want to go ahead and try to draw using the canvas context. It actually gives us some really good insight as to how we can go ahead and create shapes and use those shapes for our games or whatever we want to do inside of the canvas. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and begin a path. That's basically how you actually draw something on the canvas using the canvas context. So I'm going to first call up my context, and then I'm going to put begin path. The dot. Now I go ahead and use the arc. So I'm going to be using this canvas context here. So I'm just going to copy paste that and hit arc. And now all I need to do is put the parameters of what goes inside this arc function here. So the first parameter is going to be the center point. So I'm going to put 175. Then I'm going to put the next thing is going to be 50. And then I'm going to put the start angle. The start angle is going to be at 0. And then I'm going to put the end angle. And the end angle is basically going to wrap it all the way around. So I'm going to put 1.5 multiplied by pi, and that is math.pi. Close that off. Save that. And then I can go ahead and end this stroke. Or go ahead and give it a stroke. I'm going to go ahead and refresh this. And you won't see anything because it's black. So to resolve this, what I have to do right before I begin this path and I start creating this, this arc, I'm going to go up here and I'm going to create a context, and I'm going to create a fill style basically. Basically the same thing I did here when I created that rectangle. I'm going to do it again down here, except I'm going to say white. After adding this, I want to change a few things. I'm going to change this to 100, and I'm going to go ahead and put this at 10. I'll leave that at 0. And this one right here, I think I want to change this to straight math pi, but I want to multiply that actually. Instead of by 1.5, I'm going to multiply this by 2. And I want that to go clockwise actually. And to go ahead and finalize this, I'm going to go canvas context, and I'm going to call the fill. Now I'm going to go ahead and refresh this, and you see we have that ball there. If I don't do the fill, it's going to give me a stroke by itself, and then it's going to give me that context. But with this stroke, really, I don't really need this stroke. I can actually just leave the fill there, hit save, and go here and refresh that. You see I get the same results. So now that we have our ball here, we need some sort of timer. Every game has a timer that allows you to use these ideas of physics or to emulate the idea of physics, not 100% physics, but to give the game the illusion that it has some physics applied to it. So we need something that's constantly being updated. And basically in JavaScript, we'll use what's called the set interval method. And basically that method it calls a function every millisecond, every so milliseconds, right? So it's in milliseconds in which it calls, and you can set the intervals in which it will call the function. So let's say if I wanted it in 3,000 milliseconds, I can go ahead and set that, which is 3 seconds. Every 3 seconds is going to be called. So in our case, what we want to do is go up here to create this var, and it's going to be frames per second. So FPS, and I'm going to make that equals 30. And then I'm going to go ahead and call the set intervals. And I'm going to give it a function to call, a procedure to call. But I haven't made the procedure yet. I'm just going to go ahead and give it the name, and I'm just going to call it update. So this is my game update. And then I'm going to say 1,000 milliseconds for every frame per second. And then I'm going to close that off. And this basically is my game loop. And I'm going to take this name here, and I'm going to go ahead and create the function down here. So I'm going to create a function. And that function is going to be called update game. So basically every time this runs, this will be called. So what do I want to run every single time the frame, every time this clicks over? Okay, what do I want to run? Well, I want this to be drawn every single time the timer clicks over, because I need it to update all the time. If not, then it's just going to draw on the screen and leave the last one there. So what I'm really interested in is everything here where I'm drawing something, whether it's the ball or whether it's anything, I'm going to actually want that to be inside of here. The only thing is, you know, I can do this and add this inside of here like this. I'm just formatting this just a little bit. And this will be fine. Except I don't like the idea of this being encapsulated in here and being, you know, it's just a big mess. So every time I add something, I'm going to have to go ahead and do all this context drawing, all this filling and stuff. And inside my update, it's just going to be a mess. I won't be able to see what's going on. So I want to change this into another function called draw ball. And inside of this draw ball function, I'm going to put all the draw ball code. Now I just take this draw ball and I can go ahead and put it inside of the update function. Now this right here is uppercase, this one's lowercase. I'm going to go ahead and stick to lowercase first. And later on, when we get into more other programming languages, you'll see why I started it at uppercase. It has more to do with scope, but we're not into that right now. So go ahead and make sure all your functions and procedures are lowercase. And so this pretty much does, no, it exactly does the same thing, where I have this draw ball code here, and I'm running it inside of the update function. So just like we did earlier, when we had this stage canvas here, and we had the height here, and we had, you know, the width and the height here. And then we had to go down here and we used that stage canvas right here inside of this fill rectangle, you know, width and height, because we didn't want to have to keep going back and forth and changing that. Well, we want to do the same thing with the ball. And right here we have these magic numbers with this ball. And I want to change this X and Y coordinate to something, a variable that I'm able to have access to. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to ball X. And I'm going to change this one to ball Y. And then I'm going to go up here into my variables. I like putting my variables all the way up here. Now remember, you don't have to do this in JavaScript. You can actually declare your variables anywhere. But the reason why we're doing this is for educational purposes, because when you get into other programming languages, it's going to be exactly the same thing. So this is why we are doing it this way. Ball Y. Actually, I'll put X first. Ball Y. something like that, right? Now I'm going to go ahead and separate these two because really what I want is I want to declare what these will be initially. So I'm going to say ball y equals 100. I mean ball x equals 100 and ball y equals 100. And I already have that filled here, so now when I go ahead and refresh this, you say, well, what happened to the timer? What happened to all that stuff about, it's constantly updating? Well, we don't really have any movement yet. So really what I need to do inside of this right here, after I draw the ball, what I can do is I can, at the top of this, I'm going to go ahead and start the ball moving. So all I need to do is say ball y plus plus, close that off, and this is a capital there. And now I'm going to refresh this. And now we see we have some movement here. We have our ball moving in the y-axis, and it's adding on the y-axis. That's awesome. So let's go ahead and move forward from there. Now, so we can understand this, ball plus plus is basically taking whatever the ball is, and it's adding to that. If I wanted to add a little bit more to this, I can say ball equals whatever the ball is, plus equals 10. And then when I refresh this, you can see it's moving a lot faster. And if I were to say, let's say 5 plus equals 5, whatever the ball is, it equals the ball plus 5. I'm going to refresh that. It's going to go half the speed there. So again, here I have ball plus equals 5. And when I did that 5 and I did that 10, so let me do 10 again and you'll see. I did 10 and the ball was going faster. And then when I did 5, or 1 or whatever, the ball goes slower. And I did 1. Let's say, no, I didn't do 1. I'm doing 1 now. Look how much slower that ball goes. But this is not really another magic number. I'm going to have to change this to something that I can use. So maybe during the game I want the ball to go faster. Maybe I want it to go slower. I'm going to have to use a variable here. And basically, the name of this variable is obvious. The name of the variable should be speed because... And it's the ball speed because we saw what that does to the ball, and we kind of have an understanding of how we want to use this later in the game. So I'm going to call this ball speed, and I want to know that this is the x speed because there's also a y speed, and I'm going to give it that same ball speed equals, let's say, like 5. I need this to be y, ball speed y, and now I'm going to go down here and change this number to ball speed y and save that. And now when I go over here and I refresh, I can see that everything works exactly the same. Now let's try the x. So I'm going to take this variable here and I'm going to change that to ball speed x. Once I go down here and I set the x ball speed here, I'm going to set the y to make that x also. And then all I need to do is go down here and change this ball x. Oh, we already did that. Okay, so we have the ball x and we have the ball y. So now I need to save this and refresh this, and it should be going at an angle. And there we have it. It's doing what we expect it to do. And I want it to where if it hits this wall here, let's say if it hits the width of the rectangle, then it's going to bounce back. And for now, I'm going to remove the x. No, I'm going to remove the y. And I'm going to refresh this, and we should see it going to the right. So in order to make this look like it's bouncing off the sides, what we want to do, just like what we did initially with this canvas width, we want to make this extremely general in saying that we only want the width of the canvas to be affected. So all I need to do here is put in my collision. So I'm going to say check, and I'm going to close that. Now I'm going to take this right here, this function, and I'm going to go ahead and create a function down here. I'm going to call it the same exact thing because that's what I'm using in that spot. So now I know here is going to check the width of that function. Okay, so now in this function I'm going to say if So I like to go ahead and create the structure of it first. So I'm going to say if ball dot x, or ball x, and we've got to make sure this casing is proper. If ball x is greater than the canvas width. If it is, we're going to say ball x times equals -1. So what that will do is whatever it is, anything multiplied by the negative is going to flip it over to the other one. So every time it does this, it's going to flip it over to the, instead of going plus plus, it's going to be going negative. So let's see if this works out. I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to refresh this. Let's look at this ball move. This ball is probably going to be moving kind of slow. Looks like I have an error here. So let's look at what we have here. So I have this function here, and I have it being run here. Right, but look, I can see this here. This right here should not have a space between there. Let's see if that is the issue. I'm going to go ahead and save that. I'm going to refresh it here. So it looks like that was the problem. So let's see what happens over here when it hits this corner. Okay, so we need it to bounce back from this area here. So really what I'm looking at here is a mistake in logic. So every time the ball is going, if we look here, look, it's going, it's going, it's going, and when it gets to the end of the screen, it flops back over here once it gets to a point to where it's going to flip the number back to the beginning of the screen. So this is not a problem in code, this is a problem in logic, where I put the ball x here when actually I was supposed to put the ball speed. I'm supposed to change the direction of the ball speed, not necessarily of the position of the ball. And so we see that error there, and I really like to show you guys these errors so that way you can see how anyone can really mess up on these things, especially when you're not thinking straight, and I'm trying to do this on the fly. So basically to let you guys see how these errors can come about. So I already fixed, I think I fixed that error. Let me go ahead and refresh this, and I should be able to see the ball bounce from the right to the left, and there we have it. So it looks like it's going there, and then all I would need to do is make the one over here to where it bounces off of that wall the same way it bounced off the right side. So all I need to do is take this exact same thing, and I'm just going to go down here and put that the same way, and I'm going to flip this around. If the ball is less than, and basically this is 0. So now when I refresh this, it's going to go to the right, and it's going to go all the way over to the left. It's going to keep going back and forth. So now all we need to do is do the same thing for Y. Right now I have this checking the width of the canvas, but actually I should change this to check collision detection. So I'm going to change this to check canvas collision. It makes more sense here. And then all I need to do is go up here and change this one here to the same thing. And when I refresh this, you'll see everything works exactly the same. I'm going to speed up this ball a little bit. So I'm going to go to the ball speed, and I'm going to change this to 10. I'm going to refresh that just so we can see it work a little bit faster, so we don't have to spend an hour waiting for it to go from one end of the screen to the next. So let's go ahead and do the same thing with the Y. I have this ball Y speed here. I'm going to change this to 10 also. And then I'm going to go down here. I'm going to take this same thing here, and I'm going to do the same thing down here, except I'm going to change this to Y. And instead of width, I'm going to change this to height. I'm going to change all of these to Y. So I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to go ahead and create my Y speed, my ball Y. I'm going to change this speed right here to Y. So now I go ahead and save this, and when I refresh this, what I should see is a ball bouncing around the screen. Awesome. You guys did great. Now, if you don't understand this, please go back and watch the video. But it's pretty straightforward. I mean, we basically decided what we wanted to do. We fixed the errors as we were doing it when it didn't do what we expected to happen. So you always want to make sure that whenever you're doing anything in code, you have to expect what's supposed to happen when you're doing it. So therefore, you will always be ahead of the game when an error comes up that actually it looks like there is no error. Like it looks like the game is running, but the logic is wrong. You remember when I went over here and I had, instead of the ball speed, I had the ball X and it was flipping around to the other side. That's not really what I expected. So that's why I knew there was an error there. If I would have kept going, the game or the application would have been a mess. There would be no fixing it, for someone to go find it because the game would be working. It's not a normal kind of syntax error. So we have those syntax errors where the one where I had the space in between here, and that was an error where it just wouldn't work. And then the other kind of error where it's a logical error where you have the game running, the game is not, or the application is not giving you a syntax error, but it's not doing what you meant it to do in code. Those two errors are both devastating to any application, and you want to make sure that your documentation is sound so where when a team member comes in, they'll know whether something is supposed to work a certain way or not. Therefore, they won't make the same mistake that most people will when they don't understand how the application is supposed to work and with those logical errors. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you leave a comment if you have any questions. I'll see you next time.